Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Football Countdown. I'm Ryan Coop here alongside Adam Stewart, Trey Colbeck. Welcome one and all to our Week 5 CFL preview here on the Canadian Football Countdown. We'll talk through the storylines for the 3 games here this weekend. We'll talk some CFL Fantasy and make our picks against the spread for the week as well, and touch on some breaking news from the Montreal Alouettes. They may be on a bye week this week, but they find their way to get into our preview show nonetheless. So welcome one and all. We are live, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, on the Canadian Football Countdown here, all made possible by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more over on facebook.com/GameTimeTV. We'll be taking your comments. We'll be taking your questions in the chat. We'll read them all as they come in, and we'll pull them in where we can here as well throughout the evening. So get those into the chat as well. Before I bring in the rest of the panel, I do want to mention we are a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. And as always, want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Now let's bring in the rest of the panel here this evening. Directly to my right on the screen, we've got the great Adam Stewart rocking his Saskatchewan Roughriders hat. Adam, how you doing tonight?
Not only a Rough Rider hat, a lucky Rough Rider hat. Anyway, doing well. Actually just went out and looked at the crops. The crops are doing excellent right now. Got some really good looking wheat and really good looking canola. So all good out in this way. Good week so far, and we'll see how this goes.
Right on, and joining us here as well in his Toronto Blue Jays cap, we've got Trey Colbeck. Trey, the great Trey Colbeck, can't forget great. How you doing tonight, Trey?
I'm doing fantastic, guys. And, I just thought this thought. The NHL schedule came out. Interesting. The Jets don't have any home games on Sundays this year, so there should be no scheduling conflict when it comes to playoff time. Just a little tidbit there, because there's always seems to be a problem here the last few years that Jet games and Bomber playoff games go on the same day. So I think that's interesting. The NHL's finally learning. We don't play games on Sunday in Winnipeg.
Awesome. Yes, very exciting to get the NHL schedule out as well. We got a lot of football to talk here tonight. Only 3 games, but still plenty of stuff to discuss. We've got a couple people joining us live in the chat here. See Andrew in the chat. Hello, Andrew. Good evening to you. And everybody else joining us here tonight as well. Well, before we start diving into the games for this week, let's dive right into the big news from this afternoon. Some news I would say we all kind of saw coming. We talked about it, who was on hot seat already in recent weeks. And on their bye week, the Montreal Alouettes firing head coach Kahari Jones, defensive coordinator Baron Miles. Danny Machocha, general manager, takes over the job at head coach. Noel Ford back for, I believe, his 3rd stint with the Alouettes in the defensive coordinator role. Guys, something we saw coming, I'm sure, but what do you make of this move this week? Let's start with you, Adam.
I'm a little surprised that it's happened already. I mean, everybody's been talking about this now since almost all the preseason, and essentially, I think Mel Stiegel brought it up on TSN's panel first and said that Danny Machocha was looking to possibly take over, and that Kahari Jones was under kind of a microscope. And I was like, really? It's Kahari Jones. This is the guy that led a team back to a little bit of relevance ever since their quarterback carousel, ever since Anthony Calvillo has been gone. So to me, it's very interesting to see him gone. I mean, let's face it, everybody kind of predicted that probably Danny Machocha wanted to come back as a head coach. This early in the season, though, I know that they had a bad game against Saskatchewan, but in all honesty, I didn't think that it was probably fire the coach and take the defensive coordinator with you and get out kind of time. Trey, what do you think about this time?
Again, I'm surprised, but I'm also not surprised because I believe on Monday we were saying the Jerry Jones effect, right? So, and again, not from the owner, I think from the GM. So again, if it was any other GM, I don't think Kyle Walters would be making this move, putting himself in as coach, or other other general managers like that who aren't coaches. So I think it was very timely. And again, we don't know what's coming from ownership. You see what he says on social media. Seems to be a guy with his head screwed on right. But yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know. I wonder how much it plays into the quarterback thing. I wonder if Kari lost the room. There's a lot of things you can wonder about it, and I think we'll learn more as the season goes on.
I also wonder a little bit, like you said, how much of this was the owner, how much of this was the GM? Because, yeah, there's lots of talk. Danny Machoch want to be the head coach. But you're right. How much of this also had to do with Gary Stern, the new owner? I mean, he wants to be a winner any way he can be, it seems like, in Montreal. And, like we had the comparison on Monday to Dallas Cowboys. Montreal might be just starting to turn into that, right?
Yeah, I think you could see very much that Kahari Jones was on the hot seat, and very close to early on the season losing his job. The preseason comments from his owner, Danny Machocha, seemed like it was kind of his prerogative, or I don't know if I pronounced that right. He want him basically, intending to take over the coaching role at some point here. And you kind of saw it, maybe the writing on the wall, when he pulled Vernon Adams back in week 1 or week 2, very early in the game, kind of a desperation move there, a little bit from Kahari Jones. Now, of course, you have the bit of infighting on the bench, I think it is. There was the news this week that linebacker Trey Watson ended up getting released from the team after it sounded like some choice words or whatnot were shared between teammates as things got heated, as that game got away from them. So, yeah, you're already put in a corner to start the season. You're already, making desperation moves. Now your team's getting at each other's throats. It's the bye week. It's not the start to the year they wanted. I'm not surprised this is happening this week. I love Kahari Jones. I'm a big Kahari Jones fan. And I think he will be back in a CFL coaching role of some sort in very short order. And, I'll put this out there. This is just maybe my own prediction, thoughts, or whatever. But offensive coordinator in Hamilton, Tommy Condell, has not put together a great game plan here the past couple of weeks. And Hamilton, very shocking 0-3 start to the season. 0-4, actually, I believe. Sorry. Could this be them on a bye week making a change as well? Could we see Kahari Jones as an offensive coordinator, maybe in a system like Hamilton there as well? I don't know. Do you guys see him finding another job here in short order, Trey?
Like we were joking earlier, booster juice, right? He's going to go back to his booster juice business here in Winnipeg. I could see him definitely. Again, it needs to be an opening, and I think the team's on the bye week, which is what, Toronto, Ottawa, and Hamilton, right? Those three. So Hamilton's probably the one to do the move. I can't see Ottawa doing it, and I can't see any of the undefeated teams making a move right now for OC, and even Saskatchewan. So if that's the move in the CFL, I did like what Adam posted. I think he said something about XFL on Twitter. That's an interesting one. Never know, because they're trying to find coaches and they might pay him to stick around and not coach and be a guy. You never know. And that's definitely a possibility for him. I would like to see him back in the CFL, though. Adam?
Yeah, I'd like to see him in the CFL, too. And when you think about it, Ryan, you had a great point on Hamilton. He would be a great guy to sit down with Dane Evans and try to see if they could work through what problems are coming to that Hamilton quarterback and see if they can maybe get him going. However, like I said earlier on Twitter myself, the XFL is looking for high-quality coaches. This guy here, like I say before, was one of those guys that was a player's coach. One guy that did have, maybe this year something changed, but did have a pretty good command of that locker room going into 2019, 2020 there until the canceled season. So, like I said, I'm very surprised this happened. I would like to see him get another opportunity somewhere as a head coach, because I think he'd really run with it. I just don't know where quite yet. Let's face it, if things keep going the way they are in Hamilton, you never know. He could be in there as an assistant head coach or OC possibly this year, or definitely next year. I could see him probably going somewhere And let's face it, if Ottawa doesn't even pull up their socks pretty soon, you never know what can happen there as well.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from Andrew in the YouTube chat saying GM and owner should worry about the people in the seats, not coaching the players. I do not like this from Danny Machota. The underlying I hate it when a GM fires the coach and says, yeah, you're not basically fault the coach for the situation. It seems, says I can do it better. I'm going to take this job over. And I honestly don't think coaching is the problem. I said it preseason. I don't love the depth of the Alouettes roster. I think there are a few depth issues there, and I think that's coming to play. And coaching, sure, impacts it a little bit and such like that. But I will never outright wish for somebody to fail necessarily at their job, but I would kind of love to see things flop here for Danny Machota, who maybe thinks he's going to come in, be the saving grace and turn this team around. And if they keep struggling, then I wonder what what goes through his mind when, maybe Kahari Jones wasn't the problem after all. It's not like you put another coach in now and can go and say, oh yeah, this other coach is the problem. No, you put yourself in the seats now, in the hot seat, basically. So you better go out and deliver here if you're Danny Machota. And we'll see how things turn around here for the Alouettes. Interesting that Baron Miles gets the can here as well. Alouettes had a big defensive performance against Saskatchewan a couple weeks ago. They didn't look too bad out there. I was a little shocked by that one, but I love Noel Thorpe, and I'm very excited to have him here as well. Hussey's Huddle joining us over here on YouTube says, I think what cost him his job were the discipline issues so far this year for them. Yeah, we saw a lot of penalties. We saw them getting a little bit heated there as the game slipped away from them down the stretch. Any final thoughts on this move for the Alouettes here? Or should we move on to previewing the games for Week 5?
Well, the other thought that I've got for you is Danny Machota should be looking at history. Jim Popp used to do this all the time, is come in, try to be the head coach, and it never worked for him very well, traditionally in Montreal. So to me, I don't like this move. It smells of desperation really quickly, and it sounds of a vanity project to me. So, we'll see what happens here, but I'm starting to regret my Montreal for Grey Cup pick. I know that. Trey?
No, I agree, except for everyone's going to say it's the St. Louis Blues. You know what I mean? Like, they changed their coach and they went on a run. But I'm just kidding. I just hate when people do that. Oh, this team did it, so it means they're going to do it. Because like you said, Jim Popp did it, but I believe Buono did it. Did he turn the season around in BC? Maybe. I feel like he did it a time or two there, but maybe I'm wrong. So, it could be one of those things. I don't think it's going to work here. I'm not looking too forward. And Andrew in the comment says it's going to hurt them, and I'm going to plagiarize you again today, Andrew, and say, yeah, it is going to hurt them. So we'll move on to the games. I think there's nothing else to say, right, guys?
All right, let's move on to the games here. Let's take a look. The first one up is the Calgary Stampeders at the Edmonton Elks. I believe the Thursday night game, a rematch from a couple weeks ago. Adam, what are the main storylines we're looking at here in this game?
Well, I think the biggest storyline that we got to talk about is the Edmonton Elks are not undefeated, or not have a victory on their hands. They pulled out a gritty, kind of come from behind victory against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Trey Ford, I think, is going to be, will he play or will he not? Right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Elks depth chart shows him as starting against the Calgary Stampeders. Pretty well, I think. What are you expecting to see out of Trey Ford for an encore performance, guys? What do you think?
I like this game, and I'm leaning towards Edmonton a little bit because, again, something I posed in the group chat. Where would you put Calgary with BC and Winnipeg? Because they're all undefeated, and so the odd makers are saying Edmonton's only 3.5 points, not as good as Calgary is, right? And I know it doesn't always work like that, but so you're saying they're only 4 or 5 points behind BC or Winnipeg? That's kind of where it would be, right? So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game, and you never know what happens in rivalry games, and they already picked up win-win, and maybe this is where Bose turns into slow-bo this year. I don't know. Who knows? Anything can happen when the rivalries go, Ryan?
Yeah, Edmonton's an interesting case because it's a case we kind of have talked about through 4 weeks of the season thus far of a dismal start to the year, slowly getting better, slowly getting better. They pick up the win last week. Now all of a sudden, I think as the season goes along, they are going to pick it up a little more. Trey Ford played okay last week, I would say. I don't think he played spectacular, but he got the job done, right? He made a lot of moves with his legs. That was his key asset there. I don't think his passing game was particularly impressive. He had one or two, good drives here and there. But the Chris Jones defense stepped up big, and they had the turnover at the end of the game there that ended up, turning the tide in their favor. They ended up going on to win by the Chris Jones defense. And I think that's a rallying point for this team, for the Elks, to have that win under them. Yeah, it was ugly, but hey, they found a way to get it done here. Trey Ford maybe settles in a little more for his second game here. And he's got the speed, he's got the athletic ability that, if he can get that passing game down, they can get that more, fine-tuned. I think he has the ability to be a great quarterback here in the CFL. We've seen Nathan Rourke basically come out of nowhere. We saw some glimpses last season. Now he's looking like the best quarterback in the CFL. I think Ford will take a little bit more time to be there, and I'm not sure I have him, going quite to the same level. But, another start this week, another chance for him to come out there and show that he's the number one quarterback in Edmonton. He's taken that job over from Arbuckle seemingly, and I assume he gets to start again this week. And now's his chance to run for it, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I think Andrew made a great point over on YouTube, just saying that Ford is fine, but he's going to have his ups and downs. And I agree with that. I mean, Trey Ford is a young quarterback. He's been playing in U Sports. I mean, let's face it, it's 3-down football, so he's going to have maybe a little bit of an advantage that way. But the game is so much faster when you get to the CFL. So I think he's going to probably adapt and learn this game as it goes along. I just hope that Chris Jones is in for whatever happens with Trey Ford, just because I know that he could be a coach that, hey, something goes wrong, you're gone. I don't need you. I'll get another guy. He's right now kind of coach. I don't know how well that'll fare for Trey Ford, but I hope it really works well for him. On the other side of the football, Levi Mitchell looks like he's recovered. He's all ready to go. And Calgary is coming in healthy this week. Looks like they're full guns a-blazing. What points does Calgary need to do to maybe improve this first half of performance? They've been known to be a little bit slower getting out of the gate so far this season. Take a look. They've been coming back for comeback victories, I think 2 or 3 out of the 4 times so far this season. So what does Calgary really need to do early in the game to get things going against the Edmonton Elks, Ryan?
I think they just need to, deliver and finish off their drives, right? I think we've seen Rene Paradis be pretty busy so far this season in the field goal department. You can move the ball down the field all you want, but if you don't get in the end zone, that's not going to lead you to a fast start to the game. They've got one of the best backs in the league. I would argue, him versus William Stanback. Stanback's out, so I consider Kadeem Carey the best active running back in the CFL right now, and he's had a couple strong weeks. He had 91 yards and a touchdown in their game against Edmonton last time. 19 carries there, especially this week. The Elks don't have a great run defense. We saw Hamilton even a little bit with, West Hills, and they don't run the ball much. Still have a little bit of success there. So I think the more we see Kadeem Carey get involved in the run game, the more pressure it takes off of Bo Levi Mitchell. And I think that has helped Bo kind of have a bit of a resurgence here early this season. So that's really the keys to me. I'm sorry, man. I'm going to take I realize I just took the two of Trey's 3 keys to winning a football game. Kick field goals. Well, I guess the opposite, right? Don't kick as many field goals and run the ball. And I think Calgary will be just fine if they do that. What do you think, Trey?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the exact same thing about running the ball. I think Edmonton's defense got them back in the game last week, and how do you not prevent that is you got to make sure you run the ball, and then you don't want to give Trey Ford those opportunities. But yeah, the Calgary offense, it actually looks better than I thought it was going to. We see it. Philpott. I don't know if this Philpott. I can remember more hearing about the other Philpott in Montreal, but sure this one's got the same kind of athleticism. Jordan Henry Mitchell's got to be Bo Levi if he wants to win this game, and like the old Bo Levi, not the old Bo Levi, but again, run the ball, keep it going, and their defense needs to keep it in, and that's the thing. I hate it because they're 4-0, but they don't feel 4-0. Neither do the Bombers. The only team that feels 4-0 is BC to me, or I guess they're only 3-0, but only team that feels undefeated is BC. Calgary and Winnipeg, two teams they feel like they should have 1-2 losses on the year. So they got to establish themselves too in this one. And Edmonton, this is Edmonton's chance to get back in the division. So it's going to be a real tough game. I'm still hemming and hawing on the point spread for later, boys.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I agree with you, Trey. I think that the BC Lions are really the only undefeated team in this league so far. They've been the ones dominating the line of scrimmage. They've been just playing exceptional on defense and offense, especially. The BC Lions are that team. We'll get into them later on here. But you know what? I really think the Edmonton Elks have a shot of winning this game just because, A, it's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen in a rivalry game. Ask Winnipeg and Saskatchewan or Toronto and Hamilton. Anybody can win at any time in those rivalry ones. They don't matter on whatever the record is or whatever the teams are. It's something weird about them. But you know what? I think that it's going to be a pretty close game. Guys, is there anything else we need to bring up here, Calgary and Edmonton? Right?
Yeah, just a quick note on Edmonton's rushing game that I'm interested in this week because James Wilder Jr. out on the 6-game injured list. They sent out Walter Fletcher over to Montreal a couple weeks ago. Wonder if they're almost regretting that a little bit now with Wilder being out on the injured list. They had Sherman Beatty come in and start the game last week. Real cheap value play in fantasy. But he didn't take, I don't think, a single snap in the second half. Fullback Ante Milanovic-Litre was basically the starting running back. And I believe it was due to a ratio problem, if I heard correctly on the broadcast, where somebody else went down. Litre is a Canadian, so they had to put him in the role. So I don't know why yet until we see the depth chart. And even then with Chris Jones, I don't really know who's going to be the running back in Edmonton this week. We'll get into it more in the fantasy section. But, it's interesting to see that. I think sometimes we see that with Hamilton as well. Don Jackson, American running back, Sean Thomas Erlington getting the start because he's the Canadian. So ratio impacting things for some of these teams here in the running game. So we'll see what that depth chart here looks like for Calgary and Edmonton. Unless you got anything else, Trey, I'm ready to move on to the next game.
No, on to Cleveland, boys. On to Cleveland.
All right, sounds good. Next up, we've got the Ottawa Red Blacks and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Adam, take it away.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest storylines in this game is that both teams are going in battered up. Both teams have a lot of significant injuries to talk about on their charts. I'm just going to pull that up here really quickly because I accidentally hit the wrong button again because I'm foolish. But we've got Hunter out. We've got Levels out for Ottawa. Both big key pieces to their game here. Abdul Kanay is out for sure against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We've also got on the Saskatchewan side of balls a lot of questionable players. Jake Hardy's out with a shoulder injury. Keenan LaFrance is out with a knee injury. That's a running back that's been used sparingly, but has been used in Saskatchewan. Nick Marshall is questionable after that big run return. He's going to be questionable with a knee injury. James Tuck is out as well, the fullback for Saskatchewan with an ankle injury. And the other one that's big for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Duke Williams did not practice so far this week. He's questionable with a hip injury. So if you're watching your fantasy plays, don't play Duke Williams possibly.
Even if he's in the lineup, right, Adam?
We'll talk about that later, Ryan. Anyways, what can you see here? I think, Trey, you're probably going to bring up here probably the run game is probably going to be a huge part of this, I would think. What's your thoughts on Ottawa and Saskatchewan's run game?
I think they need to go to it. I think Saskatchewan's had the best success when they do go to Morrow. And I think you got to get on the other side of the ball. Mazzoli's got to have more time. He's throwing for 400 yards, but he's not seeming to get the touchdowns. Well, go to your gosh darn running back then, when you're getting down in the trenches there. So Mazzoli's a great quarterback, very athletic, but you need to give it off to other guys. But yeah, quick note, I think it was like our last preview show. I asked what the heck's going on with Keenan LaFrance, and it looks like he gets 1 or 2 carries a game. So I told him, I said, I wish I could see him out there, and you do. So yeah, you got to run the ball. Like I hate in football, modern day football. It seems even NFL where you got 4 downs, you want to throw it all the time, and I understand that that's the sexy play, but you always got to run it. Ryan.
Yeah, you look at the number of carries for Jamal Morrow. It's the drum I'll beat over and over again for the Riders is number of carries in the run game. Week 1 against Hamilton, close win, 9 carries, for 14 yards, not enough there. Week 2 against Edmonton was still a close game, but seemed like they were pretty well ahead for good portions of it, especially early on. 17 carries, 126 yards and a touchdown. Week 3, bad loss to Montreal, 4 carries for 14 yards. Week 4 against Montreal, 16 carries, 103 yards and a touchdown. It's clear the Riders are at their best when they're giving the ball heavily to Jamal Morrow. And you know what? As much as I was excited for William Powell to go back to Ottawa, I was excited for the Saskatchewan side of it to see Jamal Morrow get the start because I liked what I saw from him in the return game last year. And he's proving that I think the Riders made the good choice, to hand the keys over to him in that position. Interested to see at some point they did make that trade for Mario Alford in the return games this week. So, he's going to take over the returns. I think he's injured right now. So maybe Morrow's still doing that for the next couple of weeks. But then you focus Jamal Morrow just on offense. And he's got the playmaking ability to, do a lot of great things for this team. And I think that's going to help a lot, especially with a lot of the receivers out. And you got to have other guys step up in the lineup. I think we were all shocked when Duke Williams didn't put up a catch last week for the Riders because, no Shaq Evans was the big loss this week. So we expected Duke Williams. But as Andrew says in the chat, Keon Schaefer-Baker, not respected enough since last year, should get a lot of more targets in that offense here. Adam?
I'll argue that one a little bit that he's not respected in that offense. The guy there has been getting throws to him at all times. He gets 7 or 8 throws at him a game at minimum. And let's face it, you've got a Saskatchewan Roughriders offensive crew there you've got the likes of Shaq Evans and you've got Duke Williams and a lot of other good players on that team. Even Mitchell Picton has been no slouch since coming in. I think he's got a touchdown every game since he's come back into the starting lineup there for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So that part I don't know about really on Keon Schaefer-Baker. The guy's a good player, and he should get probably a lot more throws this week, especially if Duke Williams ain't there. But, they got to spread that ball out in Saskatchewan. And that's one thing Cody Fajardo's got to start doing is stopping to go and look for one guy and one target only. He's been caught a lot of times checking out one target and then checking that same target to see if he's open and then, getting sacked or having to run for it because he's got pressure on him. So, that's with that side of the football. On the other side with Ottawa, it's got to happen eventually here where Jeremiah Mazzoli either has a great game or he has a very poor game. So far, he's had these middle and kind of average games against Winnipeg twice, and it hasn't been great really offensively yet. Is this the game where we're going to finally see a really good turnout game for Jeremiah Mazzoli, Ryan?
I hope so, because they banked a lot on bringing him in this season, and I don't think they brought him in to be their starting quarterback to throw only 1 touchdown pass in 3 games, I think it is thus far. That's a bit underwhelming. He's played well, though. They've looked a lot better than they have last year, and of the teams out east, this year, I would say Ottawa is probably, in my opinion, the best of the teams out east based on what I've seen from them. 2 pretty tight games with Winnipeg. And a very close one against BC. Like you're talking about a team that's 0-3, but has faced 2 teams that are 3-0, 4-0 on the season. So it's been a real tough schedule to start the year here for Ottawa. I don't think Saskatchewan is any easier to go and face, certainly this week as well. But I'm not doom and gloom on them despite the 0-3 start. I think Mazzoli does need to start putting the ball in the end zone a little bit more. And, if they can start converting there, the Red Blacks defense to me has been pretty darn good this season. Yeah, and in the last week, Nathan Rourke, 359 yards passing and 87 on the ground. You might say that's not great defensive play there. Kind of fell apart a little bit late in the game, but they made some key plays. I think it was 2 picks that turned the tide kind of in Ottawa's favor there for last game. So if the defense can keep, improving like they have been, I don't think we talk about Ottawa's defense very much. All the focus is normally offensively. And if Mazzoli can start converting, well, then this is going to be a good Ottawa team that in an East division that's struggling, I think can maybe pull ahead here if they can rally things in the next couple of weeks. Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's Mazzoli's game because an interesting thing I'm just looking at here, he has the least interceptions out of any starting quarterback. Yeah, he's only got 1 touchdown, but he's only got 1 interception in 3 games too. Guys like Nathan Rourke has more. Cody Fajardo in 4 games has more. Claros has more. Bo Levi has more. Arbuckle has way more. Bethel Thompson has way more. A lot of quarterbacks that are deemed the starters are throwing way more picks this year than Jeremiah Mazzoli. So I think he's playing smart football, and he's also making some big plays. He burned the Bombers a few times, just getting in the end zone. And like I said, maybe you just got to turn to the run game when you get into the red zone a little bit and balance offense. I'm just I don't know. I've expected a little bit more. I know Lapo might not have full control over that offense. I expected a little bit more out of a Lapo offense. But again, I don't think he's the OC, right? There's another guy there. So, but how much input does the head coach have? Ottawa's one of those teams. I still think they're going to cross over and finish 4th in the West. I'm banking on that one, boys. I put a lot of money. I put the house on that one on FanDuel. So, that one has to come through.
I thought we said don't bet the house. Come on, Trey.
None of the viewers do it. I can do it. But, yeah, I don't condone it.
Quick note here. Andrew in the chat did ask, where is RJ Harris? Yeah, he's listed as a healthy scratch on the injury report, which is interesting. He's been a full participant in practice, but a healthy scratch. He's been one of their top receivers for the past couple of years. So I don't really know what's going on with that, but I guess it's maybe a testament to the new depth they've brought in the offseason, right? That Ottawa has, the likes of Jalen Ackland, Darvin Adams, Shaq Johnson, et cetera, and can afford to put RJ Harris out on the bench. But I guess we'll see if he gets into a game here at some point. Adam?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to bring up in this game here, Trey will bring up what the actual number is later, but it seems like Saskatchewan's heavily favored in this game. Guys, is Ottawa just starting to just get disrespected here, or is this should Saskatchewan really be receiving this much props? What did you guys think of the favoritism in this game? Trey, let's go with you first.
Yeah, at first the opening line was at 7 and it's down to 6 now. So the bettors, I think, are leaning towards Ottawa a little bit. But again, it's Saskatchewan at home, right? So it's hard to go against that. Friday night in Regina, the Pilsners will be flowing and, might not be a sellout, but the green will be there in the Battle of the Rough Riders. So I think it'll be I think it's set up both ways. I could see it as a trap game for Saskatchewan, getting too high and mighty, and I could see Ottawa for sure covering or even winning. It wouldn't be the end. It wouldn't be the last thing we saw Saskatchewan get beat by Montreal. And again, where do we put Ottawa? Is Ottawa better than Montreal, who just fired their coach, or is don't choke there, Adam? Are you okay? Okay. But where do we put Ottawa higher up than Montreal? And so it's kind of a tough line there. So. Again, that's another one that's hard to look at. I think I'm leaning towards Ottawa, which we'll talk about later as well. But yes, Adam says in the chat, 6 points is a lot. That's a touchdown game in the CFL. You don't see a lot of I think we see a lot more of those 1, 2, 3 point games, even in teams that are lopsided. Even BC only won by 3, which Ottawa, right? So again, where do we put Ottawa in that category against Montreal and stuff? So I think this is disrespect against Ottawa. But yeah, Ryan, what do you think?
Well, my first thought was an East versus West game. I'm surprised the line isn't 20 points. And then I went back to what I said as we went through and watched every single game last week, where I think I said over and over again, the East just continues to find increasingly dumb and bizarre ways to lose games to the West. So, this is probably going to be a 1 point game that ends up the Riders win this one by one of those weird punt the ball back and forths until it goes through the end zone for 1 point at the end of the game with the way things have been trending. Yeah, it's interesting that this is the biggest line. Again, I think Ottawa, to me, is the best team in the East. I think they just faced the two best teams in the league right now, which is BC and Winnipeg, and their record doesn't do them justice. So we'll get into the picks later on, but I was a little surprised that this was the biggest line of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this, if anything, could be a trap game for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, just because I've watched a few Ottawa-Saskatchewan games, and usually some theatrics has to happen for wins sometimes for Saskatchewan. They've won them, but you know what? I think Ottawa is a way better team than what has been given credit. And let's face it, Saskatchewan just lost to a Montreal team not that long ago, so the East versus West thing hasn't worked as well, I guess, for the Saskatchewan Roughriders compared to others. And injuries are going to come up to them. I mean, this question here is just for the chat and for the Saskatchewan fans out there. Make sure you mention it in the comments if you hear this later. Where is Gainer the Gopher? Has not been on the cart running around celebrating touchdowns. Has not been going out in the field and going and trying to get the crowd all wound up. He's been just sitting on the sidelines in a chair. Is he injured? Is he on the 6th game? I mean, we need to know this stuff. So if you got any answers on where Gainer the Gopher got to, please let us know in the chat later on. But what we're saying...
Look, it's been a long 2 years of COVID, Adam. Many of us, our athletic ability is not what it used to be. Give the guy a break.
Fair point, but I mean, we had a season last year, and... I mean, like, did the vehicle get repossessed or something that we can't get him to ride around at least?
He's resting up for Grey Cup week. Gainer the Gopher is going to have a huge week.
Huge week during Grey Cup week, exactly. That's what it is. So, but anyways, chat, yeah, give us only wrong answers of where Gainer the Gopher is. Would love to hear it. So, anything else with this game, guys, that we have to go through, or should we move on to our last game of the week on the Saturday night? The BC Lions and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. This is the battle of undefeated teams. I think it's a game that everybody's been really excited for by the looks of ticket sales in BC. There's a lot of people taking advantage of that $129 offer. All those seats are pretty well sold out, which is awesome. And it looks like it's going to be a busy game in BC. I guess the first thing we got to bring up is the Nathan Rourke show. I mean, is there really anything else to say? The guy has just been absolutely sensational in his first couple games here. Hasn't had a little bit of a down, let's face it, a down week for him. Is still a huge victory against Ottawa, but did have 2 interceptions. Is this maybe where Winnipeg, what does Winnipeg need to do to get onto Nathan Rourke early and often? Trey?
It's that defensive line. Willie Jefferson and Jeff Coate need to turn it into their show and take it away from Nathan Rourke. I want to see those guitar sellies. I want to see Big Hill doing what he does. Hansen, he's been all run since he came back. He's been running around on defense, and that secondary. We need who was it? Houston. I don't want to talk about the catch, but Houston needs to catch that one this week. You know what I mean? He's got it. He can't let anyone on BC take that one from him on the 1 yard line, regardless of what your views are on that play. That's what that needs to happen. The defense. I think that I can't see Winnipeg magically turning around and having their offense just be amazing after how it's been. Like, it should slowly grow, but I can't see it putting up 40 points. So to beat BC right now, your defense needs to keep them under 20, basically like they've done all year long. And then Caleros needs to put up a touchdown somehow, and the defense puts up one. And Grant's going for one this weekend, boys. He's due, right? So that's the keys right there, Ryan.
He did have one against BC last season in that shutout win, so maybe that's his sweet spot there for Janarian Grant. But for me, the big thing for the Bombers, you got to shut down Nathan Rourke. Nobody's done it yet this season. Nobody's really shut down James Butler. He's been a touchdown machine as well. So, for a Bombers defense that, has made its fair share of plays, but, I think has taken a small step back from last season. This is a big test to go against this explosive offense that we've seen for BC. But A lot of focus will be on the defense, especially. I think they got a number of injuries at linebacker is the big concern for me. Kyrie Wilson went down. Sounds like he could be out for most of the season, I believe there. I think a couple of the backups went down as well. So, maybe a little. They were already a little banged up at defensive back previously. Now maybe a little bit at linebacker as well. Next man up mentality, right? Somebody's got to step in there and take things over for Winnipeg on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, it's all about what's happening with that run game here in Winnipeg. I was somebody in the offseason who said, I think the Bombers made the right call moving on from Andrew Harris. You go with the two young Canadian running backs. I think Harris is a fantastic running back, but I think the offensive line played a big role in his success here in Winnipeg. Well, the play we've seen this year, has me questioning just did I give Andrew Harris enough credit? Because the run game has struggled quite a bit. Brady Oliveira hasn't gotten much going so far here yet for Winnipeg this season. We keep waiting to see more Johnny Augustine. Interestingly, it was the third string guy at running back this week. Greg McRae, I believe, who got a couple of touches, while Augustine didn't get too many himself, just one there in the game for him. So now they've got three running backs on the roster. Seems like they're rotating in and out. I just want to see more of a focus on that in the game plan here to free things up for the passing game. What do you think on the Bombers, Adam?
That's kind of what I'm thinking too, is just I've got to see more run out of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and especially in a short week. I mean, if you can't get going on the run, your pass game has to be there, and that puts pressure on Zach Collaros, who traditionally doesn't like to get pressure on him. The problem is your offensive line is not quite the same as it used to be last year, especially with Michael Couture not there. That's a huge loss. I don't care. It's either like with Saskatchewan losing Dan Clark, Michael Couture is just as big of a loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We were talking about the defensive line for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. What I'm more looking at is, can the BC Lions offensive line hold up against a massive defense like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers? We've talked about it in the preseason here that the BC Lions' downfall would be that offensive line. So far, it's held very, very well, surprisingly well, in fact. But I think soon it's probably going to face a pretty steep opponent. And let's face it, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are kind of that's their identity, is their defensive line. So to me, I think that's going to be a very big key to this game. If that offensive line can hold out, lug out. The BC Lions are going to go a long ways in this season if they can hold off the Winnipeg Blue Bombers D-line. If they can't, we may have found the chink in the armor for the BC Lions. Trey?
Yeah, I just want to go another way here. We were talking about 1 versus 2 divisions. This is the game that really makes me want to have one division, especially 5 weeks in. This is a game I want to see in Grey Cup in Regina. You know what I mean? Especially if these two teams continue the way they are. BC's great offense and Winnipeg's great defense. That's a matchup made in heaven, right? So, yeah, and we're getting in week 5 on Saturday, and thank God it's not 9 or 10 p.m. at night. It's a nice 6 o'clock Central Time one out there, and so that's a 4 o'clock game on BC, I guess, right? If I'm doing my time zones right, so it's not a bad game. But yeah, I agree. Ottawa or BC's line needs to hold off the defense of Winnipeg, right? And it's yeah, and I think it's gonna be interesting because I think also BC has the running ability. And is that going to tire those guys out on defense? And then you're going to have the Winnipeg offense not be able to run it. Now, watch. We're going to say they're not going to run, and Oliveira and Augustine and McRae are going to combine for 250 yards or something ridiculous, and Claros is going to have 3 rushing touchdowns, and Drew Brown's going to have one. We're going to have some show like that, right? But at the same time, they need to get the ball going there, and you got to keep BC's offense off the field. The CFL isn't like the NFL where you have those big 9-10 minute drives, but Winnipeg needs to get a lot of those to keep that off. I think that's a big key to the game too. And how do you get that? Run the ball. BC's other way, they got to tire that defense out and they got to own the clock. So I think whoever, again, I don't know how often that actually happens, but whoever has most possession, I think is going to, or time of possession is going to win this game. I don't know who we're going to next. Ryan, Adam?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for BC, the BC side of things, the offensive line has played a lot better than we gave them credit for, I think, coming into the season. That was our biggest concern, I think, for the Lions was the O-line. And, they've performed pretty well. I think it also helps having a mobile quarterback like Nathan Rourke who can make plays on the run, which we've seen plenty of so far this season. That's a huge asset to have for your team because it lessens, the need for your O-line to give them extra time than they already do type of thing. So, but the thing for me for BC is, okay, last week, week one, Nathan Rourke comes out and shines against the Elks. Everybody's like, okay, now let's see him do it again. Then he goes and does it again against the Argos. Now everybody says, okay, now this week against Ottawa is the test, right? On the road, short week in Ottawa. He does it again. Couple bumps and bruises along the way, but massive play coming out of those couple interceptions there. Now he's going up against Winnipeg, and people are saying, oh, finally he's facing a real defense here. This is the test. What's the excuse going to be? What's the next test people are going to be waiting for to call this guy the real deal if he comes out here and plays like this against the Bombers? Like, maybe that's my question to you guys here is this the one? Is this the one where everybody is finally on the Nathan Rourke train? And I think there's a lot of us on it already, but is this the final straw for people jumping on board if he can come out and put a performance like this against Winnipeg? Or is this going to still be going throughout the season here? And we're going to hear, no, next Nathan Rourke test is going to be Thanksgiving weekend for whatever reason. I don't know. Like, I think he's legit. I think that Lions offense is legit. They're down a couple guys. Brian Burnham, out on the 6-game injured list. Andrew in the chat mentioning Lucky Whitehead hasn't practiced a couple days yet this week, but they've had some guys like Keon Hatcher step up big time here. So I love everything about what I've seen from the Lions thus far. But what do you guys think on the test for Nathan Rourke, Adam?
Well, I think this is how I'd probably put it, is this is the last stop to get on the bandwagon if you're getting on the Nathan Rourke train, because after this, there ain't no more stops until maybe we get to playoffs, and then we can say, you know what, he's never had any playoff experience, and then they can go there, I guess. But other than that, really, I think the guy, if he can prove that with two banged-up receivers, which Lucky Whitehead is hurt, apparently, a little bit, and Brian Burnham not on the on the 6-game injured list, with pretty much a kind of a little bit of a rookie receiving core, and still can do good with an offensive line that everybody still kind of a little bit questions, and can still, if he can still dominate like he's been doing out of the pocket, moving around and doing what he's done, there's no more questions here. There's no other team that is any different than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The Rough Riders look very similar to what the Blue Bombers looked like back in the day. So, I mean, let's face it, what are they going to show different, really, than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers could show? Same thing also for the teams out in the East. Tell me a team right now that would really compete well against Nathan Rourke. I don't see one, to be honest with you. Calgary, I mean, they've had a good defensive line. I don't think they're quite as strong as Saskatchewan / Winnipeg. So really, this is the last test for me anyways, for Nathan Rourke. If he can go and show up a Winnipeg defensive line, he's going to be on his way to probably the stratosphere. Trey?
Yeah, I agree. It looks like they have a bye next week against us, 2 in the first 6 weeks. So if they don't give it all this game, that'd be really disappointing. But I guess I'm going to have a counter question if we have a little bit of time. What if Winnipeg wins? What do we think of them then? Because a lot of people are saying, oh, they're not the same. They're not the same. So I think both teams have a lot to play for, more than, just the 2 points in the standings. They're both playing for some of that respect, because it's hard to say the 2-time Grey Cup champs don't have respect, but, they always have that. They're never going to do it for a third time. And you got BC who, they're on a huge rise. And, I really hope Nathan Rourke stays around. This could be a whole topic for a whole episode later, but, we see the Cleveland Browns clear up some space there. Maybe Rourke goes back to Ohio, because there's no way Watson's playing football this year, right? So they need a quarterback. But just that's, again, another podcast. But, yeah, Nathan Rourke needs to stay in the CFL and needs to stay in BC. So this is a game. This better be a watched game too. We're seeing. Am I wrong? Maybe some higher numbers on TV. Definitely in the United States. I think I kept seeing that there's higher viewership. This is a game that should be plastered on ESPN if you want to get Americans watching our game, right? So Saturday night, what are you doing in America right now on Saturday night? There's no college football. Watch CFL on ESPN.
Actually, I was going to bring up there next time. I'm going to bring my Cleveland Browns hat with me. Anyways, no, you know what? I agree with you. I think if Winnipeg wins this one, they're going to have to start proving some stuff on offense. And if they do, it's going to have to be through the offense. If the defense wins, there's still going to be questions with the Winnipeg offense. It has taken a dive compared to last year. I don't care what you guys say. I think Andrew Harris, as much as I said at the beginning of the year that, yeah, maybe it's time for him to move on, maybe it was a year too early yet. There's still think about what this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team would look like if Andrew Harris was still here. I think it would be pretty good. However, you look, they were already short on cap space to probably bring in some of those receiving core pieces that they needed. And that's without Andrew Harris there yet. So to me, I like I said, there's still going to be some big questions going forward in the Winnipeg's offensive side. I think no matter what, unless they can really, really ball out against a pretty good defense in BC, right?
Yeah, the big question for me with this game, or not really the question, but somebody's got a good handful of people are going to overreact ridiculously much to the results of this game. Whether it's, from the team that wins, thinking your team is the greatest because you took down the Giants that they're facing, or, the other one. Like we saw this week in Winnipeg, it kind of seemed a little bit like the sky was falling here after that game against Toronto that almost didn't go their way, but the team is still 3-0. These are two undefeated football teams. I don't think a win here is going to propel anybody to an undefeated season. I don't think a loss is going to, make it doom and gloom for either of these teams. I think we're going to see a game here between two real good football teams that are going to go head to head. One team's coming out with a win. One's coming out with a loss. Probably both back on the right track next week, regardless. So, it should be a fun one. Huskies Huddle here in the chat mentions, I believe Winnipeg also plays Calgary next week. So, yeah, that's a couple big games in a row here for the Bombers here. So I'm just excited, man. As was said earlier, game of the year so far, I think, and I am very excited to tune in for this one.
No, I want to touch on the Winnipeg sky is falling. Yeah, I've never seen fans lose their minds so much over a win before. It's insane. And a clear touchdown catch. It was clear. It was, whatever. On to Cleveland. Let's go to talk fantasy, boys.
Yep, for sure.
All right, let's get into our CFL Fantasy segment here. An interesting week to talk CFL Fantasy. The three of us playing in the CFL Podcast Fantasy League this season. Trey, you've got Brazilian Ty from the 2 and Out CFL Podcast this week. And we've got a bit of Canadian Football Countdown Civil War going on as Adam and I go head-to-head. So we're going to go through the best options at each position because I know Adam's got a real tough matchup this week and could use some help. So I figured we'll go through and talk through the options.
Hey, this is my BC Winnipeg game. I'm just saying. I'm not saying which team I am, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, 4-0 against 3-1. Hey, anything is up in the air. Should be a fun matchup this week in that. The fantasy charts are not quite ready to go yet. I have been working on them this weekend. I have them up here, but they're not quite finalized to bring back the charts that I usually use for this segment. My joking excuse is I just don't want to give all of the info away to Adam for our matchup this week, but we will still go through and talk through all the options. So let's start at quarterback this week. Most expensive one on the dock is, by the way, 3 games, so only 6 options for starting quarterbacks to choose from. Nathan Rourke comes in at $12,752. Cody Fajardo at $10,820. Jeremiah Mazzoli at around $9,500. Big drop next to Bo Levi Mitchell at $8,500. Coleros drops down a little bit to $7,920. Trey Ford, the cheapest of the starting quarterbacks at $7,000. Tough week with very limited options available. Last week I kind of said Nathan Rourke is kind of priced out at this point. And what did he do? He put up over 30 points again. And at this point, you almost can't deny it. To get full value out of him, you need 32 points this week. He's averaged 37 on the season, which is something ridiculous. Again, tough test against the Bombers defense, but he makes so many plays that if the rest of my roster can fit it in, I may be thinking, Nathan Rourke is an option here. And even if he doesn't hit the full value, seems like he's capable of hitting at least 25 points regularly. You just hope at that price you don't see him come crashing down. Other interesting plays, Trey Ford really intrigues me. I almost took him last week. He's the cheapest one on the chart. You need 17.5 for full value out of him, and he put up 14.5 in his first start last week. Tons of rushing yards for Trey Ford. You can expect that again this week. Maybe he gets the passing game involved. So looking at those couple options, Claros, Bo Levi Mitchell, interesting prices as well, but none of them have been really hitting their values consistently here so far for me. So depending on the rest of my roster makeup, I'm probably either going big with Nathan Rourke or taking a chance on Trey Ford myself. Adam, what do you think?
Well, I've been trying all week to figure out a way of putting Nathan Rourke into my roster. And then it dawned on me he's playing Winnipeg. So I don't know if I really like that move as much as I thought I was going to at first. I have a funny feeling that you still have Winnipeg and you still have the BCO line that you got to think about a little bit. So to me, I'm not really sure on Nathan Rourke. I've been looking at Cody Fajardo. I know that his value hasn't been making his value, and he's very expensive pick this week, really, for what he is. But Ottawa traditionally has not done well with Cody Fajardo coming there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fajardo might even be undefeated against the Ottawa Red Blacks. So to me, he's probably the option I'm looking at right now. If I don't go with him, it might be Bo Levi Mitchell just to see if I can pick up some cheap points against the Edmonton Elks. But again, that's getting harder and harder to come across because the Elks have improved quite a little bit. So at the moment, I'm going to probably go with Cody, but that could change by game time as well. It also might just be Drew Brown just to pick up some cheap points because everybody thinks he's going to run a few. And maybe if I say that right, I'll pick him up. Anyways, Trey, what about you for quarterbacks?
Yeah, right now I got Trey Ford in. I think 7,000 is not a bad thing, and you hope that he performs well. And I think this is the game for him to do it, rivalry game and at home, right? So I have Trey Ford in there, but that's what I said last week, and then I made sure to have enough room to move it. So I might do that again. I have Zach or Bo Levi as kind of my backups. I have enough salary, I think, for no, not Bo. I have enough salary for Zach, though. So that might be my switch. Or I'll do the Drew Brown. You never know. Maybe he'll get some goal line sneaks. You never know.
Yeah, well, the only thing is Edmonton is in the first game this week. So you got to choose by Thursday night. Are you going Trey Ford or not there? Interesting one to me. Also, we haven't really talked about Jeremiah Mazzoli. Comes in at 9,500, third most expensive quarterback. He's averaged 15.3 points this year, despite throwing one touchdown in 3 games. So he's got the production through the yardage. Can he get the touchdowns on the board? He probably needs 2 on top of his yardage there to hit his value of 23.7 points. So I'm staying away from that play. But if he can start putting those touchdowns on the board, maybe Mazzoli becomes more of an option at quarterback going forward there. Also, if you want to pick a cheaper guy potentially to just punt the position away, I think Caleb Evans is the best cheap quarterback. You save a little bit. You save. He's in $4,403 back up in Ottawa. Maybe gets a rushing touchdown. I wouldn't recommend, but the option is there if you want it. Let's look at the running backs for this week. Same thing, only 6 starting running backs to go, but of course a plethora of options because of how teams have been using them this season. James Butler comes in just over $10,000 at running back, is the most expensive by a good margin, and rightfully so because he's averaged almost 28 points a game this season in his 3 starts. Kadeem Carey, the second most at 86.83. Jamal Morrow, 80.61. William Powell, 73.90. James Wilder's on the list. He's on the injured list. Don't pick him. Brady Oliveira, 49.69. And then seemingly he's listed as starting running back again. Sherman Beatty at 3,500 are kind of your starters. You've got, other options in here as well. Johnny Augustine, almost $4,000. Greg McCrae got some touches. He's at 2,500. Ante Milanovic-Litre got some plays last week, 2,500. So a lot of cheaper, interesting plays that aren't locks there as well. But tough week at running back. Again, not a lot of options. I hate picking running backs this season because there's so much time split everywhere. And honestly, this is probably looking like a week where I'm picking two of the top three from this list here. Kadeem Carey, huge game, as I mentioned earlier, against the Elks last time out. The Elks struggle against the run. Kadeem Carey is the lifeblood of that Stampeders offense right now. 22 points. Yeah, I think he could hit that or come pretty close. He's only averaged 15 on the season, but that does include week 2, I think it was, where he went down pretty early. So that plays into that. I like Kadeem Carey as a player. I also really like Jamal Morrow again, who gets involved in the run game when they play well, gets involved in the passing game, and currently also gets involved in return yards and has the second highest average at 18.7 on the year. So those are kind of the two running backs I'm looking at. Maybe one of those Edmonton guys, Beatty or Milanovic-Litre, if I need to save some cash there, are my options for running back this week. Let's go to you first on this one, Trey. What are you thinking?
Running back's the position I like to spend money, boys. So I got James Butler. He helped lead me to the highest score in the league, or one league last week, right? And my second spot right now, I got William Powell, because we'll talk about it later in the betting, but pretty sure Ottawa might have a decent game, and I think Powell hopefully gets involved with it. So that's my two right now. Yeah, I'd stay away from the Winnipeg, BC guys, obviously. Sorry, half Hatcher, but I'd stay away from the Winnipeg guys. You never know what's going to go on there unless you're trying to save money. I did have Jamal Morrow, but like I said, I think I might be leaning towards Ottawa, so I'm going to go with Powell. Adam?
I'm going to go with the usual good old reliable for me. I'm going to go with Kadeem Carey, of course. Edmonton, again, still terrible against the run. So until they can prove that and they can prove me wrong, I'm going to keep picking the player that's against the Edmonton Elks, essentially, for running the game. And Kadeem Carey is usually the guy for Calgary. I don't think you'll see much of the backup for Calgary in this one. Kadeem Carey had a week to rest. So that's one of my picks. The second one's going to go completely off the board because I'm trying to save some money here. I am going to go with Frankie Hickson from the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and there's actually a reason behind that. He had 5.7 points last week, had some good carries, had some good room when he had the opportunities, and I think Jamal Morrow is going to be a little bit tired from running the ball back all the time. So you know what? Frankie Hickson gets some good yards in there. So I will go with Frankie Hickson, I think, right now. And again, $2,500. You can't really go wrong that way.
Yeah, and Andrew in the chat also was mentioning Frankie Hickson as an option as well. And a couple lineups that played around this week, I was somewhat leaning that direction also when I saw how well he performed with the touches he got last week. $2,500, really not a whole lot to bank off of. In terms of not a whole lot of risk, right? Your full value play there is 6.3 points. You miss out on that, you make that up easily, potentially at another position. So I don't have a problem with taking a chance on a $2,500 player. But I'll say, again, I'm staying away from some of these timeshares. Brady Oliveira, Johnny Augustine, Nithro, Greg McCrae into the mix. Not sure I'm touching that backfield there for Winnipeg necessarily again this week. Let's take a look at the wide receivers available for this week. Let's start in the upper echelon of prices here. Reggie Bagleton, most expensive at $10,026. Lucky Whitehead, $96.81. Again, missed a couple days of practice. Kenny Lawler comes in next at $88.13. Duke Williams, $85.80. Brian Burnham, don't pick him, out on the injured list as well. Kamara Jordan, $85.24. Greg Ellingson, $80.36. Let's go Dominic Rhymes, $78.86. Those are kind of really your top-end receivers. I noticed actually at receiver this week, there's kind of distinct lines between the tiers of receivers. Like, I think I had like $5,000-ish left to spend, and it was either you pick one guy or you have $1,000 left to spare because the next is around $4,000. So, of these upper echelon guys this week, I think you're in tough with a lot of them. And to me, as Andrew says in the chat, better off going for mid-low tiers. I generally lean the same way because every one of these guys I look at, like Reggie Begelton, 10,000, well, I could take Malik Henry for half that price. BC's receivers, well, I could take Keon Hatcher for half that price. Greg Ellingson, maybe the one for me. Bit of a more down last week. Last week, I think he was injured for a little bit. But if Winnipeg has a good offensive game, it's going to likely involve a decent amount of Greg Ellingson here. So, I don't love any of the top priced options at receiver. I'm spending big at running back this week probably, so I don't think I'm going that direction. What do you guys think? Trey, any big prices at receiver you're going for here?
No, not a dime going on the upper levels. I think the highest I'd go is Schaefer Baker, and he's not in my lineup yet, but he's only at 6,000. So no, the receiver's hit and miss, man. Like, you're going to spend 10 grand on Begelton. He better put up, a lot of points, or even Whitehead. And I got to stay away from, I already got a couple BC guys. So I think I'm going to stay away from Whitehead. Lawler too, hit and miss. I don't know how he's going to do with that. I like Hussey's Huddle. I'm not going to attempt to say that name right now, but
Luther Hakunavanu.
It looks like Hakuna Matata, but yeah, I'm not going to try that again. It's great. I like that pick too, but I got my three. I'm going to go with the same three guys I had last week, which they're in the little lower tiers that we'll talk about. Adam?
Well, seeing as last week I was complaining so much about Duke Williams and $9,800 and 0 for 5, no receptions and no touchdowns.
As your opponent, I say take him again.
I was going to say double down, and then I was going to laugh and say not a chance. I'm not taking any of these real expensive guys. Look, the price is expensive for guys like this. You take a really, really big chance that somebody's going to do something. They could go off and have some huge gains for you, but there's some cheaper guys that can do a lot more for you with a lot less. So to me, I can't go with any of the big guys this week, even though I would love to help Ryan out just a little bit by having another goose egg on the board.
Looking at the middle tier here, Darvin Adams and Jalen Acklin, both around $6,400, $6,500. Keon Schaefer-Baker, you mentioned him already. Trey, $6,185. Nick Dembski out on the injured list. Do not take him. Darrell Walker, $5,935. Shaq Evans, injured list. RJ Harris, healthy scratch seemingly. Javon Katoy, $5,533. Rashid Bailey, $5,497. Malik Henry, $5,482. Manny Arsenault, $5,212. Keon Hatcher, $5,206. That's kind of your middle tier there, and then it drops down to under $4,500 after that. Here's where I think you get into a couple of more key plays. We all saw what Keon Hatcher did last week, 29.6 points. His price has gone up. He's now no longer the cheap value play, but I think he's still a value play, especially if Lucky Whitehead is going to be out. I like Keon Hatcher there as a play still at that price. I like Malik Henry potentially as well. 16.5 average for him, 29.3 last game, coming in at 5,500. But my fear there is that with how much Calgary spreads around the ball is, he had the big game this week, but who's going to be the next guy to have the big game? Maybe it's Luther Hakunavanu, a guy who's a lot cheaper on the price there. So I'm a little cautious on that one there. And Schaefer-Baker, to me, is also another guy I expect to keep succeeding here at wide receivers. So those are kind of the three I'm looking at the middle price. Ottawa, somewhat tempting. Adams, Acklin, but I'm not sure I'm going in that matchup until we see Mazzoli start putting touchdowns on the board right now against the Riders defense that's played pretty well. Adam, let's go to you first here. What do you think at this middle price?
There's a couple guys that are interesting to me. I mean, right now on my roster, I do have Keon Hatcher and Keon Schaefer-Baker, just because I think both of them are going to have a good game, and especially Hatcher. If it comes out true that Lucky Whitehead won't start in this game, then he's going to be a big target for the BC Lions there. So those are the two that I'm leaning on right now. However, I'm still looking at maybe spending some big money over on the running back side of things, and if I do, I got to go cheaper. So if I do that, then one of those guys may not make the roster right now. I also don't mind Malik Henry. I think he had a big game last week, so Calgary traditionally spreads the ball out so much that might be a little bit of more of a risk, and especially when Edmonton's probably going to be keying on him just a little bit because he had such a big game the last time. So to me, I think that I'm probably going to maybe stick with one of those two, Hatcher or Schaefer Baker, and I might still be making some moves other places as well. Trey, what do you think of the mid-tier?
I'm just waiting for the Duron Carter show to start because I'll waste $5,500 to put him in, even if he never gets to play receiver. I keep seeing him on there, and I'm like, man, he's got to come back. But no, seriously, I got I'm going back with Hatcher, and I'm going with Picton in this kind of level. I guess Picton might be the lower level. Man, you can't change what's broken, and I don't win things. So when winning last week, I'm going to stick with it for the most part. I made a couple changes, but I think my receiving core was where I had it, and Hatcher and Picton are my number 1 and number 2 guys going into this week. Yeah, I like what Andrew said. Wolortowski, I feel like last week he started to make some kind of grabs in the second, third quarter, but then they stopped going to him. He's a guy that, he's got good mitts and they throw it to him. That could be one too I might lean to if I want to change my mind or in the future a little bit. Nice guy, met him before. I checked his ID when I worked as a bouncer. Nice guy. He's a decent singer, good on guitar too, but I want to see him catch the ball more. I think he's a great player, and having one of those, they got lucky getting an American to be considered a Canadian kind of thing because of his mom's background, so I think you got to use him more. So that one, I do like Andrew's pick there, but I think I'm going to go with the same I have last week with Hatcher and Picton.
Yeah, sadly, guitar solos don't count towards fantasy points. And also, Wolortowski, the Bombers and Wolortowski doing the naturalized American before it was cool, before the new CBA deal there. There was mention of Javon Catoy in the chat as well from Andrew. Catoy is one, I don't know, I feel like at the price he's been a bit of a disappointment at times this year. If everybody else is going Keon Hatcher, maybe you go the other direction, you go for Catoy, but they come in pretty much the same price. Hatcher's even a little bit cheaper here in CFL Fantasy. I would probably go Hatcher's direction myself there, but Catoy had some good games last year, so I hope to see him bounce back. We look at the other options at receiver, the cheaper ones here. A couple Calgary receivers kind of maybe interest me. We talked about Hakuna Vanu. Richie Sindani at 42.81 intrigues me. He's averaged 9.2 points on the season thus far. A lot of people are going to go Malik Henry's direction this week after his last game. So maybe you switch it up. You go hit that way and hope Bo spreads the ball around and Sindani's his guy this week. We talked about Mitchell Picton. Seems to be getting more of a role in for the Riders. He comes in at 36.58. We talked about Drew Wolortowski already. Then we get into a couple of, cheap $2,500 plays, I think, that are intriguing on the week. And, your guy, Trey, still at that $2,500 price. Dalton Schoen put up 10.2 points as an average so far this year, 12.3 last week. And it's still $2,500 on the season. I have to imagine he's going to be in a fair amount of lineups this week as well. Quick note, thank you, Huskies Huddle, in the chat. Sindani is actually out this week. Jalen Philpott starting. So thank you for the clarification on that one. I had not checked out the depth chart yet. Another $2,500 potential option at receiver there for the Stampeders. Of course, there's many of them to go through. Who at the cheap prices intrigues you guys so far this week? Let's go to you first, Adam.
So 2 guys that I'm really looking at right now, and both of them I don't want to, well, actually 3 guys I should say. The 2, again, Mitch Picton for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Again, it gets a touchdown every game. So if you're going to count that one in there, that's a good pickup just to get one there. The other guy, though, that when I was watching last week while sitting in Saskatchewan, that I was really impressed with was Tevin Jones of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. 57 yards. I think he's waiting to have a breakout game, and this could be the one. So Tevin Jones, to me, would be a very interesting pickup. for the Saskatchewan Roughriders as well. Another guy actually that I was looking at, though, from the Edmonton Elks was Kai Loxley. Has been running the short yardage game for the Elks. So when they get down to the 1 yard line, it seems like he ends up running it in. Also does some weird options where he gets a few runs in and also gets a few receptions. He's averaging just about 10 points per game and looks pretty good. Again, $2,500. You're not really out much. And who knows, he might be the next quarterback if something happens to Trey Ford. Trey?
Yeah, I'm going with Picton and Dalton Schoen. I can't believe those guys are still valued that low. And I don't know. Like I think once once the Winnipeg offense gets rolling, guys like Waller-Tarski and Schoen are going to be pretty big keys to it. So I'm going to go with Dalton Schoen and I'm trying to veer away a little bit from Bombers because maybe on offense I'll stick with them, but we're going to come to defense. I think the BC Winnipeg game could be a shootout kind of thing. So I'm kind of scared to pick defenses. So I think some of these receivers are going to have a lot of yards in the BC Bomber game potentially, or running backs. And again, Ottawa, Saskatchewan, we don't know what's going to go on there. So I think the offensive guys could have a lot of points this weekend, and especially those lower tier guys, because BC's defense might have to, focus on some of the, Ellingson and Rashid Bailey. So you might open up guys like Schoen and Waller-Tarski. So yeah, that's what I got.
And also just remember on defenses, Trey, just remember what you said before. I'm keeping a memory of that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we'll get to the defenses here in a moment. One other guy, $2,500, Justin Hardy of the Ottawa Redblacks, was a last-second scratch last week, I believe due to illness right before the game. But he's averaged 8.5 points in 2 games so far. He's been one of the most targeted receivers for the Redblacks. Cheap price again. You need 3 catches for 30 yards. You've hit your value out of him. You get more than that. You get a touchdown in there. You're taking that pick to the bank. So if Mazzoli's putting up the yards, if he's starting to put up the touchdowns, I like Justin Hardy as a potential value play there for the Redblacks this week. Now let's take a look at the aforementioned defenses. Again, only 6 to choose from this week. BC comes in most expensive at $42.67. Bombers defense $40.94. Saskatchewan $37.59. Ottawa $3,200. Edmonton $3,200. Calgary $3,200. So we're starting to see a bit of a difference here in prices at the defenses. Interesting one again, because you've got 2 arguably of the top fantasy defenses, BC and Winnipeg, going head to head, but also happen to have 2 of offenses that don't turn the ball over a whole ton and kind of get the job done there. This Edmonton Calgary game is the one that intrigues me on defense. Calgary facing Trey Ford, maybe there's some picks there. That's intriguing to me, but do you take the chance on what we saw, a big game last week from the Chris Jones defense? I'm still going back and forth, and I may go back and forth on which defense I pick. I'm also, potentially seeing that BC defense in there against the Bombers offense that hasn't really put the pedal to the metal so far yet this season. They haven't scored a bunch of points. Maybe the Lions can get home for a couple sacks there. So it depends what the rest of my roster looks like price-wise. If I can fit BC's defense in, I may go that direction. Otherwise, it could be somebody from Battle of Alberta there. Trey, what are you looking at on defense here?
Well, my options are getting limited because we all know I can't take Saskatchewan, and I don't want to take BC or Winnipeg because it's probably going to be like 40-0 BC, but I think it could also be 40-39 games. So I want to stick away from them, and I'm not too sure about Edmonton, Calgary. So what do we have left? I'm going to go with the Ottawa one, just a cheap one. I'm going to go with it. And I don't know, because again, I don't know who else to go with. I like the Battle of Alberta angle you had there, Ryan, but it's I can't have a decision on which one I would take more. So I think I'm gonna have to go with Ottawa, but yeah, we'll see. I'm sure I'll get text about it.
I'd like to let you back into the green pasture, but I just can't, Trey. Every time you pick them, we end up getting destroyed. So anyways, I think it's pretty clear and obvious which way I'm going to go this week. just because, let's face it, Jeremiah Masoli has thrown quite a few sacks or picks this season. He's taken a few sacks this season. I think Saskatchewan is going to feast again this week. I'm going to go with the Rough Riders on this one. I was thinking, though, a little bit about the comment you made, Ryan, about the Calgary Stampeders and Trey Ford. That'd be interesting. But, I think Chris Jones is going to have the guy prepared and ready for whatever Calgary can throw at him. So, I don't know. I might switch it to Calgary, but I doubt it. I'll probably stick with the Riders.
All right, I think that does it for the CFL fantasy options for the week. Again, make sure you check out those depth charts because that can really impact things quite a bit and change things at the last minute. First game of the week comes Thursday night. Enjoy the week of CFL fantasy there. Let's get into our picks and our bets for the week. 3 games on the schedule. Take it away for us here, Trey, with the first game of the week.
Yeah, first game of the week was the pre-mentioned Battle of Alberta. Calgary on the road, favorites -3.5, going to Brick Field in Commonwealth Stadium there. I'm going to take Edmonton +3.5 here. I just got a feeling, Canadian quarterback's undefeated. Let's see how long that streak goes. And I actually have a bet I just placed. I'm going to take Edmonton with another underdog later. We'll talk about to outright win and parlay those two together. So I'm going to take Edmonton. Adam?
I want to take Edmonton just because I want to see Trey Ford win this game. And I also have the mentality of ABC, anybody but Calgary. But you know what? I just can't see Bo Levi Mitchell losing this one here. Coming off of a bye week, he's healthy. He's ready to go. Same thing also, Kadeem Carey has been a beast so far this season, and Edmonton has not stopped the run. Until they can stop it, let's face it, they played Hamilton last week, who doesn't run the football. So that was an exception. I think Hamilton kind of let Edmonton back in more than Edmonton let themselves back in. So, no, I'm going to have to go with the Stampeders right now.
Yeah, I was actually maybe going to lean towards Edmonton on this one. And then Adam said a couple key words that flipped it in an instant for me. And that's Calgary coming off the bye week. They are ridiculous coming off the bye week over the past 2 decades, I believe, of CFL play here. I would even more strongly pick them if they were coming off a bye at home. But on the road here, I agree with a lot of what Adam just said about Kadeem Carey and Edmonton not being able to stop the run. And I'm not sold on what I saw from Trey Ford last week. He played well. He got the job done. The Ticats are not a very good football team so far this season. So I want to see what he does against Calgary this week before I fully go in the Elks camp. Maybe if the spread was, a touchdown, I'd pick Edmonton here. But this close, I think Calgary wins by a little more than this. So that's my pick.
No, I get what you guys are saying. This is one game I won't be upset if I lose. I think Edmonton, I'm going on a hunch more than anything, and that's what you got to do in gambling sometimes. But on the Friday night, Ottawa goes into Mosaic. Ottawa, the Road Dogs, +6. I'm going to take Ottawa, and that's my second half of my underdogs, my parlay there. I put a couple bucks on Edmonton and Ottawa, both the outright win. I'm going to go with Ottawa again. I'm going on a hunch. I think the East is a little better than what we think, and I don't think Ottawa's 6 points worse than Saskatchewan. Ottawa is a team that was really close to Winnipeg and BC, and so you're saying they're 6 points worse than Saskatchewan? I'm really scratching my head on that line, so I'm going to go with Ottawa. This time we'll go to Ryan.
I feel like, last week I said I was going to go a confident 4-0 last week, and I went 1-3. So I think I got to switch up the strategies, and something seems to be relatively working for you guys. So I may have to agree here with Trey and go with Ottawa. I was leaning Saskatchewan originally again as well, but as we talked about throughout the show, the more we actually talked about Ottawa and who they've faced and who they've lost to, I think Ottawa is still a pretty decent football team. I still tend to want to lead towards taking Saskatchewan because it's East versus West, and we've seen how that's gone so far this season. But I think for my outright pick, I probably would take the Riders here. But I think Ottawa is going to make it close enough that I'm willing to take the chance on Ottawa here with my pick this week, and I'll go agree with Trey. Adam?
I just can't wait for that Friday night football music to hit from TSN. I just love that old music that they've been playing all season so far this year. So that's kind of cool. That being said, I think I got to take my hat off for a few minutes. I want to say that the Saskatchewan Roughriders are going to be winning this game. I don't think it's going to be by 6, though. Just because Ottawa, for some reason, always gives Saskatchewan fits. It's always a close game. So to me, I think that Ottawa is probably going to not. I think Saskatchewan will win this football game. I don't think they're going to win it by more than 6, though. So to me, I'm going to go with the Ottawa Red Blacks to cover, but not win.
Awesome, guys. So, final game, 3-game weekend. Winnipeg goes into BC early evening in Central Time. I deliberately didn't wear my Bomber hat because there's no way I could wear my Bomber hat and pick BC to win this. I took BC to win this by more than 3.5. Oh, sorry, that's what it is, minus 3.5. I took BC for this one. I'm not confident in that Winnipeg offense to keep up with BC's. I think the defenses might be similar, but I think it's going to come down to the offenses. So I'm going to say BC wins by more than 3.5. Adam, what do you think?
I think you might be wrong to something there, Trey. I'm thinking Nathan Rourke is going to have a field day again, unfortunately. I don't know why, but I think that, yes, it's the Winnipeg defense. It's got Willie Jefferson. It's got Jackson Jeffcoat, and it's got Hansen in there, Thaddeus Hansen, who I really, really like. But I don't know what it is about that Winnipeg offense that just does not sit well with me this year. I think that if the defense can get going fast, they might win with the touchdowns that they can get, but they're going to have to rely on the defense to get touchdowns, and that usually doesn't bode well for anything. So you know what? I think that the BC Lions are going to win this by more than 3.5. Ryan?
At this point, I'm not betting against Nathan Rourke. He's proved people wrong first 3 weeks. The Lions have proved people wrong their first 3 games. Part of me wants to go different here and say Winnipeg loses by a field goal, which I think would still, if you pick Winnipeg, if I'm understanding the lines here, would pick the Bombers. But again, BC, the Bombers, I don't think they've looked necessarily sharp throughout their 4-0 start to the season, outside of maybe that game against Hamilton. BC playing at home here. If it was in Winnipeg, I'd be going for the Bombers, I think. But I think this one, I will go with the Lions as well.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, just a quick recap. Adam and myself are at 9-7 on the year, which is not bad for point spread. And the rookie Ryan at 7-9. So you got a chance to hit 500, man, this weekend with the 3 games. So yeah, you could do it very easily. Sorry, Adam, who did you took Ottawa in the second one, right? I didn't write it down.
Yeah, I took Ottawa to cover.
Sweet, awesome. So yeah. And I'll make sure to check out my Twitter because I'm pretty on top of it. But you guys got half an hour before game time. A couple of West Coast games, so got a little extra time if you change your mind Thursday and Friday night. But BC Saturday one's a little early.
Yeah, well, I said last week I was going to go a confident 4-0, and it didn't work out, like I said. So this week, reverse psychology, I'm going on a very non-confident 0-3, which hopefully means the inverse of that. Of course, you can follow our picks along on Twitter. Trey tweets them out for us every week, which is great. Resident betting expert Trey bringing the heat for this segment each and every week. And as we always say, make sure you, if you play responsibly. Do not bet the house. Do not bet the farm on what we say here because we do not want to be held responsible. And we are not liable if you do follow our advice on here. Anything else you guys want to discuss, or should we get into wrapping it up here and moving on to the games for week number 5?
Maybe just one thing. I think it's interesting to note the Edmonton Elks free kids under 12. As a dad of 3 kids, that tickled my fancy. And Ryan, he got one on the way, man. So that's something I'm surprised more teams don't do. And yeah, I like to see that. And of course, it's going to be Edmonton or some team like that would do it. So I just want to know what your guys' thoughts were on that little thing too.
No, I love the idea. I mean, anything to try to convince some of the younger the younger generation is always what you're going for, the next generation. You can't be looking back at the age, even of my age. I mean, I'm only, 33, 34. But you know what? You want to get my generation, but you really, really want to get that 18 to 25, 30. And hey, if you get them younger at 12 to younger, why not? If you got parents that, let's face it, everybody's playing flag football nowadays. There's all sorts of kids that are getting involved more in football. This is a great way of going and convincing them, hey, look at these guys in the CFL. You can see the Canadian quarterback. You could be that guy one day. And that's how you're going to build your game even better than it is right now, which, let's face it, the CFL is starting to get better and better every time that you talk about it, with little things that have been going on like this. So to me, it's a great deal, right?
Yeah, anything that gets future fans in the door, right? You get kids in the door, even just from, a sales perspective. Kid gets in the door, they want popcorn, they want, snacks, etc. Trey's nodding along here. That helps obviously your sales, and you get them in the door, and then it turns into a future fan. Growing up as a little kid, I wasn't a huge CFL fan until, I was maybe 10, 11 years old type of thing. I did go to games here and there with my dad, but honestly, as a little kid growing up, the highlight of that for me was getting to stay up late past my bedtime because the games go late, and good food and getting to spend time with my dad type of stuff to go to the games growing up. And well, now I obviously live and breathe CFL and any chance I can get here. So, and getting to go see the games gets you in the door, gets you interested in whatever they've got going on at the stadium. And you never know where it's going to take people from there. So, hey, free tickets for kids under 12. Get them in the door, get them excited, and looking forward to that. Future games down the stretch. And then that's paying customers eventually coming back once they're not 12 or under. So I think it's good. I would like to see more teams. I think we talked about the price package in BC already as well. Keep doing more things like that to get fans in the stands. Anything else, guys?
The only other thing I wanted to just bring up was the ratings in the U.S. Actually, they've been showing some of these ESPN2 ratings on the Nielsen charts, and overall, the CFL is doing very good in the U.S. right now. Now, I know it's not NFL season. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of news with the NFL, minus today. But otherwise, no, it's been very nice to see some extra eyes on the CFL, and let's just hope that they can maybe be convinced to kind of stick around and watch the rest of this season here. Any guys want to bring up anything on the ratings?
I think it's interesting because we talk a lot about these spring leagues that don't work, but they kind of do work at some time, and I think the CFL is now, to the Americans that don't know about the 100-year, tradition up here, might view it as another interesting spring league with a little bit of different rules and something you can do while the NFL's not on, and nothing wrong with that. And I think the more American interest you get, we might get our video game, right? Can't hurt that. You're not going to make a video game for 35 million population country of Canada, but you will for North America, right? So I think that's all good things, boys, Ryan.
Yeah, I think that's got to be like up there on long-term goals of the success of this podcast, is to grow this big enough that we can start a petition with enough impact to finally get us that CFL sponsored video game, right? That's on the goals chart. That's on the flow chart for future podcast growth. No, I agree. It's great to see more fans down south getting involved, and fans across the world really tuning into the CFL and getting into it as well. And, a lot of people, you see more and more threads on Twitter, on Reddit, etc., the CFL Reddit of, hey, I'm a new fan tuning in for the first time. Who should I cheer for? What should I know? I love seeing that. That's great to see that people are excited about the CFL, even those finding it for the first time. So very, very exciting on that front. On that note, I think let's get into wrapping things up here for week number 5 preview. Let's take a look at what's coming up here on the podcast. We've got, this was the week 5 preview. We've got the week 5 recap coming up on Monday, July 11th, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, 8 p.m. Saskatchewan time. You can join us as we'll break down the 3 games, give our players of the week, and our power rankings as well. Always lots of fun to debate that. The weekly preview next Wednesday as well for week number 6. Same thing we did tonight. Previews, fantasy, pick'em, bets against the spread, all of that fun stuff. You can join us live over on YouTube. Search the Canadian Football Countdown there. Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod. On Twitter @CF Countdown Pod. Twitch.tv/CF Countdown Pod, and on the Game Time TV YouTube page. Shout out to our presenting sponsors there. You can catch all of our shows there live every week and join us in the chat as some of you have been tonight. Great commentary in the chats as well. Happy to have folks interacting with us throughout the night here. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us as mentioned on Facebook and Twitter @CF Countdown Pod. Make sure you check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well. Guys, where can people find everything you've got going on these days? Let's start with you, Adam.
Well, you can find me over at Adam Stewart 1. You'll either get crazy hair pictures like you got right now, or you're going to go and end up getting pictures of a really nice looking wheat crop or canola crop. Or you're going to get pictures of me at a CFL game. So you know what? If you want to talk CFL, want to talk agriculture, want to talk what kind of haircut I should really get, because, man, this has been driving me insane for the last 2 weeks, you can let me know over at Adam Stewart 1. Trey, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter @TreyMBHarness. Like Mike mentioned on Monday, it's my Christmas Eve this week. I got my horse racing season picks up this weekend, so fortunately, I got a bad cough, so I've been going through the halls. So we all know as announcers, we got to get rid of that a little bit, but I'm sure I'll be fine. Fortunately, not live streaming the next few weeks, but if we do get up simulcasting, I will definitely talk about it at the end here to tell everyone where to see it. But yeah, @TreyMBHarness, you want to talk football, horse racing, Star Wars, a UFC, any sport, baseball, Blue Jays. I just don't want to talk about the Brandon Banks touchdown anymore. I had my fun this week with that. And let's move on.
Yeah, lots of riveting discussion over on Trey's Twitter page there around that touchdown in particular. You can find me on Twitter @CooperTrooper42. If you want to talk CFL, you want to talk CFL Fantasy, send me, you're not sure who to pick. Unless you're Adam, you can tweet me and I will happily discuss. Adam any other week but this one. But of course, all in good fun. Just taking in some CFL Fantasy. It's a good season for reality TV starting up this week. Big Brother 24 US started tonight. The Challenge USA, new version of that show starting as well. And Amazing Race Canada starting yesterday. So love reality TV. If you ever want to chat that, find me on Twitter as well. Watch the Big Brother premiere right before we started this night. Very disappointed in the majority of the episodes. So I'm hoping the season gets better after that there as well. @CooperTrooper42 for myself. You can find Mike on Twitter also @MikeGarrell. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we always appreciate it if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends. Help us grow the show. Always appreciate that. And as always, thanks for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.